So this is the beginning of your Westward Expansion project. Up until this point, we've learned about the 13 colonies, the Ohio River Valley that was won in the French and Indian War, and then how all that land became part of the United States through the American Revolution. So we're going to look at those two pieces of land again, and then we're also going to look at how the United States got all of the land that it currently has, with the exception of Alaska and Hawaii. We won't get too much into that today. But we are going to look at the rest of the land purchases that you see here. So let me go back real quick. You should be using the note sheet that's in Google Classroom. You'll then take these notes and annotate the growth of the United States map for your Westward project. So on your note sheet, it does give you the original 13 colonies. You know about the original 13 colonies, and so you need to fill those questions out by yourself. So the Treaty of Paris is the next piece of land. It is the Ohio River Valley, and we got it in 1783 with the Treaty of Paris after the American Revolution ended. We got it from Britain, because remember, Britain had won this piece of land in the French and Indian War, so after the American Revolution, it became part of the United States. We got the land through the treaty at the end of the American Revolution. Britain gave up all their lands between the Atlantic Ocean, which is right here, this coast, the Blue Ocean, and the Mississippi River, which essentially is this divide between red and pink. The difficulties that they faced in getting the land were that the Loyalists were treated unfairly. So people who sided with Britain during the Revolution had a really hard time in society after the Revolution. Next is the Louisiana Purchase. So we set up the Constitution. We had a first president, George Washington. And then our third president, Thomas Jefferson, decided that he wanted to add to the United States. So Thomas Jefferson approached France because he wanted to purchase New Orleans. He only wanted New Orleans. The United States didn't own this piece of land. You can see it stops here with the blue. He wanted New Orleans so that they could control the Mississippi River. So he went to France. He went and talked to Napoleon. And Napoleon needed the money to fund a war. So France sold the Louisiana Purchase for $15 million to Thomas Jefferson. Once Thomas Jefferson purchased the Louisiana Purchase, it doubled the size of the United States. So the United States was only to the Mississippi River, and then it added all of this land in here. The difficulties were, how did the United States plan to discover the land and figure out what was there? And the way that they did this was by using Lewis and Clark. And they're two explorers that Thomas Jefferson hires to explore the land and come back and report to him about what is on this land. More on them at a later date. Next is the Florida Cession. To cede, C-E-D-E, means to give up power or territory. So the Florida Cession happened in 1819. Spain ceded or gave up land to the United States. Andrew Jackson was a military leader at the time. He invaded Florida with his troops and he refused to leave. And so Spain pretty much just gave the land to the United States, but James Monroe, who was president at the time, had to pay settlers a total of $5 million for their land because it belonged to them and they didn't want to give it up. The difficulties they faced were how to deal with Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson's going to continue to be a problem as we move into Native American relations in U.S. history. Okay, Texas annexation. So there was a bit of an issue with the Texas annexation. All of this area in purple and light purple belonged to Mexico. They had invited United States settlers in. They said, come, settle here. And eventually, those settlers wanted the land. And so Mexico said, not a problem. You can have everything east of the Nueces River. So here's the Nueces River, so it's light purple area. The Spanish said, or the United States settlers said, no, we want everything east of the Rio Grande. So they wanted all of the purple, dark purple and light purple. And lo and behold, there was a war, the Mexican-American War, and we got all of this area that is now Texas. So the Texas annexation, annex means to add. So cede means to give up, annex means to add additional space. So we added additional space with Texas in 1845 by President Polk. We got the land from Mexico through the Texas Revolution. They had to fight the war to get the land. So Texas had applied for annexation before, and it was not approved. The Congress didn't add them to the United States. So after this war, they fought, they pled their case. James K. Polk, the president at the time, decided to add Texas to the United States. The Mexican Cession. So the Mexican Cession is important to us because it includes Nevada. It includes California, Nevada, part of Colorado, Utah, most of Arizona, and most of New Mexico. And we got it in 1848 from Mexico with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. So after the war, not only did we get Texas from Mexico, we got the Mexican Cession. They fought the Mexican-American War to get this land. And in the treaty, Mexico lost this big chunk of land to the United States. The Mexican-American War saw many Americans lose their lives. Next is Oregon Country. We got this piece of land in 1846, and I know it's funny because it's Washington and Oregon now, but it was only Washington back then. We got it from Britain. So Britain had this piece in Canada up here. They also had this little piece here. Everything else at this point belonged to the Americans, the United States. So we negotiated a boundary line right here, which is between Canada and Washington, and bought Oregon Country from Britain. And that's why we now have the Canada-Washington border. Next is the Gadsden Purchase. So after the Mexican-American War, we had the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. This chunk of land right here in orange was not included in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. So it was purchased from Mexico in 1853 by James Gadsden. He arranged a purchase agreement so that he could have a flat land to build a railroad all the way across the United States. He didn't want to have to go up into the mountainous states. He wanted to go along the flat desert area from the West Coast to the East Coast.